What's up guys, it's Eric from Rare Candy and welcome back to another deck and battle here on PTCGO, and today we're taking a look at Garchomp Lucario. And I know some of you guys might be thinking, well hey, this deck came out back from Ultra Prism and kind of flopped, so why are we still talking about this? And that's actually because Forbidden Light had a host of new alternate type reprints, much like Ultra Prism had, but we actually have an alternate type reprint of Garchomp back from Ultra Prism. Previously it was a dragon type, and now we have a fighting type version, and you know, that might not seem like a big deal at first glance, but I think beneath the surface that actually does add a lot to this archetype. So in the past we had that dragon type Garchomp had a decent attack, but being dragon type you couldn't hit anything for weakness. You also had kind of a bad weakness to fairy at the time. You couldn't abuse any of the fighting support that existed. So the fact that we have a fighting type Garchomp that can hit Zoroark GX for weakness and opens itself up to a bunch of the support cards that the entire fighting type has, I think actually gives this deck a bit of a boost, and that's why we're going to revisit it here. So let's take a look at Garchomp. So as I mentioned, this is going to be the same one that we got back from Ultra Prism, but instead of a dragon type we have a fighting type one, which means we can abuse things like Strong Energy, Diancie Prism Star, even Brookwood Hill for maybe some of the pre-evolutions. But the main reason we're looking at this card is for this Royal Blades attack. For a fighting and double colorless energy, 100 plus 100 more if you've played Cynthia from your hand during this turn. So like I said, same card that we had in the past, but now that we have a fighting type Garchomp, we can abuse things like Strong Energy, which means Royal Blades can hit for 220 base damage if you have a Strong Energy, which is really nice. Also, of course, once you factor in Choice Band and or Diancie Prism Star into the mix, you can basically one-shot everything in the current format, which is really nice. Also does have an attack quick dive, not the greatest in the world, but we do have it as an option just for a double colorless energy, 50 to one of your opponent's Pokemon. But like I said, Royal Blades, kind of the star of the show here. Now, since this is a fighting type Garchomp, the weakness on the card did change from Fairy to Grass, which I think actually is probably a little bit worse now, just because Golisopod and Tapu Bulu are still very popular Pokemon, debatably more so than Gardevoir now, so there actually are more Pokemon that can hit Garchomp for weakness, and it's actually kind of big in the case of both of those decks because Tapu Bulu no longer has to discard their energy to knock you out. Same thing for Golisopod. Now a first impression will knock you out and they don't have to burn their GX move, but nonetheless I think it is worth the trade-off, just being a fighting type and gaining all of the nice additions around that typing. So if you notice, we are only playing 2 of that Garchomp, which means we're also playing 2 of the other Garchomp from Breakpoint. So the reason we're playing this one is because I think a big downside to this Garchomp deck is the fact that Royal Blades requires 2 attachments. You know, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but for example, if your only Garchomp gets knocked out, it's going to take you 2 turns if you don't have any other energy on the field to get another Garchomp powered up, and that's assuming your opponent doesn't pick it off by the time you get it up and running. So what I've kind of found is that I kind of prefer to pivot into that Garchomp later in the game and actually just lead the game with this old Garchomp from Breakpoint. And that's because of this Turbo Assault attack for just a single fighting energy to 60 damage, and then you attach an energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. So what's really nice about this, it does not specify basic energy, which means we can get things like double colorless energy and strong energy back out of the discard pile right onto another Garchomp to power it up. So like I said, I really like leading the game with this, especially now that we have all of the fighting support that we can put in this deck. We have Diancie Prism Star and Strong Energy in the mix. So Turbo Assault actually on its own is a great 2-shotting attack. With a Choice Band you hit 90, with a Strong Energy or Diancie you hit 110, which means we can 2-shot everything with this great attack that's going to accelerate our energy. So Turbo Assault is definitely the main reason we're playing this card, but Bite Off, its other attack, is kind of situationally useful as well. For 2 fighting energy does 80, plus 80 more if your opponent's active is an EX. So right now the current format is very GX dominated, but nevertheless there are still a few EXs that are in the format, probably most notably Volcanion EX, Zygarde EX, and maybe Regirock EX. Those are probably going to be some of the more popular ones that you're going to see. So every once in a while Bite Off can be a little useful, but if you're going to commit 2 energies to a Garchomp, you'd probably just prefer it on the other Garchomp since it can knock out basically everything. So, and before we go on to Lucario, it is important to note the pre-evolutions that we are using for Garchomp. We are using the 60 HP Gibble back from Breakpoint. So the reason we're using this one is not only for its HP, but because of its typing as well. So there is a 60 HP Gibble from Ultra Prism, but it's Dragon type. And unfortunately, we did not get an alternate type version of that since it actually does have a pretty solid ability. So the only other 60 HP one that we have access to is going to be this Gibble. And so another reason why it's really important that we use a fighting type one is because we play Brookwood Hill in this list, so we can search it out with that. Also, if we have a strong energy in our opening hand and not a basic fighting, we can't actually attach that to a dragon type Gibble, so we need a fighting type one. And the reason we're also playing this one over the other fighting type Gibble is because that one has 50 HP, which means Buzzwole can more easily knock you out. And also the attack is not as good, I don't think. That one does have Ascension that lets you evolve right into a Gabite, and though I think a lot of people would initially gravitate towards that, really not a big fan of that, because that means you're going to evolve into Gabite, leaving your 80 HP Gabite with an energy attached to it in the active spot, and it's just so easy for your opponent to actually knock out. It's just too much of a risk. So Never Enough, I think, is going to be a little bit better, and like I said, the extra HP is also nice as well. However, we are playing two of the Ascension Gabite. This is the fighting type alternate type version of the same one that we got back from Ultra Prism. So this one does have Ascension. You get to evolve into Garchomp for a single fighting energy. And I actually do like this attack, however, just because with this one, you're going to evolve into a Pokemon that has, at the very least, 130 HP up to 150, depending on which Garchomp you are opting to evolve into. And that's actually a lot harder for a lot of decks to easily knock out. So just think of Zoroark decks just as an example. If you evolve into the 150 HP Garchomp, they actually realistically don't have a great way to knock that out unless they hit you with like a Kukui, full bench with a Devoured Field in play or something like that. It's going to be a lot harder for your opponent to knock out that 150 HP Garchomp. So that's why we are opting for this one. So going on, we also have a 2-2 Lucario line, as you'd probably expect for this ability, Precognitive Aura. So once during your turn before you attack, if you have a Garchomp in play, you can search your deck for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So this adds an insane consistency boost to this deck in the mid game. That's one thing I actually have always loved about this deck ever since it first came out, even though it hasn't done that well, is that in the mid game, once you get going, this deck really picks up a lot of steam, being able to just search any card out of your deck. And if you have two Lucario in play, being able to search any two cards out of your deck is an insane consistency boost. Now the big side or downside to Lucario though is that in the early game this ability is not that great because a lot of times it can be a little difficult getting a Garchomp into play. And for that reason we are actually playing a 1-1 Octillery line as well. For this Abyssal Hand ability, once during your turn before you attack, you may draw until you have 5 cards in hand. So like I mentioned, Lucario, fantastic ability, but in the early game it doesn't actually help you get set up. It kind of just helps you keep going throughout the course of a game. Octillery, on the other hand, actually can help your deck set up and get its core strategy up and running. So that's why we're playing the 1-1 Octillery line. I originally had a thicker Lucario line, but like I said, because it just wasn't helping me get set up in the early game, cut it for the 1-1 Octillery. We play Brookwood Hill, so we can easily search out Remoraid in this deck, and then we can just have to dig for an Octillery from there via an Ultra Ball or a supporter or something. And also in the late game, I do actually like Octillery sometimes a little bit better than Lucario, because in the late game, if we get hit with an end to one, just as an example, if we have Lucario in play, well, that's nice. We can probably grab ourselves a supporter for turn, but more than likely, we also need an energy attachment or maybe a rare candy or, some sort of other piece of the puzzle to close out a game. And that's actually where I also like Octillery, because we can refresh our hand, maybe getting a piece that we need and then using Lucario to finish getting the other piece of the puzzle, so to speak. So like I said, really liking Octillery in here mainly for the early game though. Then we're also playing one copy of Diancie Prism Star. You've heard me mention this a few times. It's a new Prism Star that we got from Forbidden Light. It has this ability, Princess's Cheers. As long as it's on your bench, your fighting Pokemon's attacks do 20 more to your opponent's active. So yet again, just another damage modifier that you can potentially play in this deck. I do think this is, however, a slightly flexible spot, but it's just in case we whiff either the strong energy or the choice band, we have another out to, pushing more specifically our Breakpoint Garchomp's damage output high enough to where we can two-shot things. So, like I said, kind of a flexible spot if there is something else you're dying to include, but like I said, just another way we can help ensure we can two-shot things. And then to round out the Pokemon line, of course, just 2 copies of Tapu Lele for that Wonder Tag ability, and we do play double colorless energy, so that means we do have access to Energy Drive as well if we choose to. So going on to the supporter line, of course we're playing 4 copies of Cynthia, kind of a given since Royal Blades does require us to play Cynthia from our hand, which is actually not a bad thing since Cynthia is just in and of itself a great supporter. Shuffle your hand into your deck, draw 6 cards, fantastic draw power for a deck like this that has rare candies and things like that. You'd prefer to play shuffle draw options over something like Professor Sycamore most of the time. But even though we're playing the 4 Cynthia, we are still playing some other draw supporters, 3N, 1 Sycamore, just as some other forms of draw power. And especially in the early game, a lot of times you don't really want to use Cynthia. You want to save those for when you start attacking with your Garchomp. So we definitely want some other ways to draw cards in this deck. Us playing 1 singular copy of Guzma, which might seem a little bit low. So of course we're playing Guzma to choose what we want to take knockouts on, but one thing you have to remember is that Garchomp requires you to play Cynthia to actually, get that 100 extra damage. So that means a lot of the time we actually can't even afford to play Guzma because we need to play our Cynthias instead. Now, despite that, I think still do need to play some combination of Guzma or other switching cards, just because, especially with the Breakpoint Garchomp, if we're having to two-shot things, we want to use Guzma at some point to maybe clean up a knockout or something like that. So Guzma is still important for certain KOs throughout the course of a game. Also playing 1 copy of Bridget, pretty straightforward just to get our basics into play, and this might seem a little bit low. I know a lot of these setup decks play 2 or more copies of Bridget, but we also play some copies of Brooklet Hill in here, so even if we whiff the Bridget, we do have some other outs to getting some additional Pokemon into play. And speaking of which, like I said, 3 copies of Brooklet Hill. So once during each player's turn, that player may search their deck for a basic water or fighting Pokemon, put it onto the bench, then shuffle your deck. So if you notice, everything outside of Tapu Lele in this deck is searchable by Brooklet Hill, which means we can, very easily get our basics into play, which is big with a deck like this that requires so many moving pieces to really operate at full steam. And so another card in the format that is very problematic for this deck is Parallel City. So Parallel City, of course, will limit our bench size to 3. So we definitely need an answer to that. So instead of just playing, more copies of Field Blower, I would prefer Brooklet Hill here, because not only can we counter the Parallel City, removing it from play, allowing us to fill up our bench, but the stadium that we're bumping Parallel City with will allow us to fill our bench at the same time. So really, really good card in this list, especially with how popular Parallel City has been. So a lot of standard stuff here, 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Rare Candy just to help get our evolutions into play, 2 Choice Band, 2 Float Stone as expected. Float Stone in particular is nice because a lot of our support Pokemon have awkward retreat costs. Octillery has a 2 retreat, Diancie has 2 retreat, even Lucario and Lele have a 1 retreat, which typically isn't that bad, but really with this deck you don't want to miss any energy attachments just because Garchomp requires 2 energy attachments to do that big 200 damage attack. So being able to retreat for free thanks to a tool is going to be better than burning in energy. Also 1 copy of Rescue Stretcher just as a form of recovery. Now some people might opt to try to play Super Odd, but I definitely think Rescue Stretcher is superior in this particular deck just because we have that Breakpoint Garchomp to get back our energies already. So Rescue Stretcher, the flexibility that it gives us to get a Pokemon directly into our hand, I think is going to outclass Super Odd in this particular deck. 1 copy of Pal Pad, that's going to be some supporter recovery. So we get to shuffle 2 supporter cards from our discard pile into our deck. So this is nice at getting back those Cynthias if we're forced to use them in the early game. Also maybe get back our 1 Guzma that we have, or just whatever you might need throughout the course of a game. And we're playing 2 copies of Field Blowers. This is another way to get rid of Parallel Cities, and also if we go against Garbutter decks, once they get that tool card down on their Garbotox and Garbutter, we're not going to have our abilities, and we are in a very ability-centric deck, so we definitely want ways to get rid of those tool cards to allow us to use our abilities. And then I believe to round out the trainer cards, 1 copy of Counter Catcher. This is going to be our other switching card that we have in our list. So we can only play it if we have more prizes remaining than our opponent, but then we switch one of our opponent's bench Pokemon with their active. So this is really nice because it gives us an out to being able to use Cynthia and switching our opponent's active in the same turn, which is really big. And also, even outside that specific situation, Counter Catcher, kind of a nice card because we typically go down on prizes first since we are kind of a setup deck. We're a little bit slow getting going. So more than likely we are going to fall behind in the early game. So Counter Catcher, even outside of those instances where we want to do a switching effect and Cynthia in the same turn, still a solid card, I think. And then just to round out our deck, we have, of course, some energy, 4 double colorless energy, 4 strong, and 3 basic fightings. So like I mentioned, those strong are really important now that we have this fighting type evolution line for Garchomp. So it can only be attached to fighting Pokemon, it provides fighting energy, and it does 20 more damage to your opponent's active. So like I said, between this, Choice Band, Dynasty Prism Star, we have some ways at pushing our Breakpoint Garchomp's damage output, high enough to two-shot things, and also ensure that even if we go against some of the big 250 HP Pokemon in the game like Metagross or Giurleo GX, just as a couple of examples, we still have ways to take one-hit knockouts with our new Garchomp from Forbidden Light as well. So yeah guys, that is going to be our updated look at Garchomp. Let's head over to the battle portion of the video and we'll show you how this thing looks in action. Alright guys, so we did find ourselves a game here, just going to call the coin flip, which we do win, which is definitely good with a deck like this. We need every turn possible to get set up for our opponent can. And unfortunately, we are going to have to take them away. And here, our opponent has a Dragon and Psychic deck box. So, if I just had to guess, this is probably going to be some sort of Malamar deck. Malamar has been everywhere on PTCGO lately with Forbidden Light being legal now. And here, okay, we actually have a pretty good opening hand here. So, actually really liking the way this is going to go. So, let's see what our opponent is going to be playing. Now, unfortunately, they are going to get an extra card from Mulligan, and here they're going to open with an Oranguru. I'm actually okay with that. So here we have an Ultra Ball. That's definitely good. We have Rare Candy Garchomp ready to go for next turn. So I think we go for Lele and go for Bridget, of course, just to get set up. But here we get rid of double colorless energy. And normally that's a card you don't really want to get rid of, just because your energy attachments are very precious, and especially double colorless energies. But actually, what we can do is we have the Rare Candy Garchomp ready to go on next turn. After we play the Cynthia next turn and Rare Candy, we can just find a fighting energy. We can actually accelerate that double colorless energy back onto the field. So here we're just going to go for Bridget, going to grab ourselves Remoraid, Gible, and Riolu. That seems okay to me here. Okay, and I think we just pass. So it seems okay. Moment of truth, let's see what our opponent has. Okay, so we are going to see an Inkay hit the board, so this is going to be Malamar. I'm assuming Ultra Necrozma as well. I don't know what other dragon type you would really want to pair with it. So let's see if they can have a Bridget of their own. Okay, so we're going to see Dawnwing's Necrozma and just a Professor Sycamore. Okay. So they did have to put a Metal Energy in the discard pile. That is good for us. I know those are going to be very precious for our opponent. So they got rid of a Guzma and a Sycamore and a Malamar. So not the best Sycamore for our opponent, but hey, I am completely okay with that. Okay, so I guess our opponent didn't even need Bridget. They were able to get pretty well set up here. We have Mysterious Treasure, going to get rid of a Psychic Energy. Maybe going to grab a Lele. Okay, just another Inkay. So they probably have a Draw Supporter ready to go for next turn if that's the case. And just pass. Okay, so good setup from our opponent here. Going to Rare Candy into Garchomp. So we can't play Cynthia or N, but I think we just go for the Cynthia. I don't want to refresh our opponent's hand. Okay, so this is actually a really good turn. We have Lucario. We can actually use Lucario since we have this Rare Candy Garchomp. So we definitely want to use Precognitive Aura. We can do a couple things. We can grab, okay, I think we just go for the rare, This is a little risky, but you know what, I think we're going to be okay. Because we can Rare Candy into Garchomp. And it's kind of risky because we could have grabbed the Supporter or Octillery, and if our opponent knocks out this Lucario, we're going to be in some trouble, but really, I think we're just threatening too much right now. We have this double colorless energy on this other Garchomp, we have this strong energy in hand, and so yeah, I think our opponent can't really afford to knock out this Lucario. They can see that, I'm going to be knocking on their door, putting on pressure. They need to deal with this threat in the active, so that's why I think our Lucario is probably going to be safe here. Okay, so our opponent, what do they want to do? Now, the only downside here is if our opponent is able to use Dawnwing's Necrozma and take a knockout with Moon's Eclipse GX, that would actually be pretty bad for us. Okay, so here we're just going to see a Sycamore from our opponent. So I'm really just hoping they whiff the Moon's Eclipse. So here they're going to get a Malamar into play. Okay, things are getting a little sketchy. We're going to see a Floatstone come down. And what else do they have? Okay, so we're going to see Psychic Recharge. If they have the stuff to pull off a Moon's Eclipse, I think that's what they do here. Because that would actually prevent them from being, damaged on my next turn. So here we're going to see, okay, energy coming down on the Necrozma. So that means our opponent must have whiffed the energy needed to take this knockout. So we actually may have gotten a little bit lucky here. Our opponent is going to Mysterious Treasury yet again, probably just grabbing another Malamar. So our opponent must not have had an energy for turn, if that's the case. Or maybe they have a Metal Energy in hand. That actually is still definitely a possibility. If they have the Metal Energy, they could... Okay, so they must not have an energy then if they're just putting it on the Dawnwings and Necrozma, just opting to spread their energy around. Definitely a good idea from our opponent here. And they're going to use Invasion. Oh, and just a pass. Okay, I am completely okay with this. So what do we do? We're going to get down Brookwood Hill. Going to Precognitive Aura, and now all we need is a Fighting Energy. After we play this Cynthia, we can take a knockout in this Dawnwing. So that's actually going to be big for us because that is definitely the threat on our opponent's board right now. So we'll get down the Floatstone on that Remoraid and then just play Cynthia. And we made it with the last card. It was a Fighting Energy, so nice. So what we can do is we can retreat here, put up this Garchomp, and then we can do Royal Blades to take a knockout here, even though this Dawnwings is going to be resistant to us, not a big deal. Still going to take the knockout. So let's see what we get here. And an Ultra Ball. Okay, so definitely like the Ultra Ball. We can grab Octillery next turn potentially. So let's see how our opponent is going to respond. So I think that was definitely a misplay, them just leaving that Necrozma in the active spot. I think that was definitely their attacker they needed to kind of fall back on and really start using. So maybe if they can super out it back into the deck and make use of it again, I think that's going to be the way to go for them. So let's see, what can they do this turn? Four cards. Let's see. Okay, they're going to Ultra Ball. So I'd imagine we might see a Tapu Lele to get a supporter if they don't already have one. Otherwise, I would imagine maybe just another Malamar or an Ultra Necrozma, or maybe even a Mew if they play something like that. That could be an option as well. So let's see what they're going to grab here. If they played Necrozma GX, that is an option. Probably not a great card, but okay, so they're going to grab Mimikyu. If they have Cynthia, we're going to be in a little bit of trouble here. They're going to Psychic Recharge. Going on to the Mimikyu, I'd imagine that last card has to be a Cynthia. And one card in hand. They must be deciding something. I have no idea what, but let's see what they're going to do here. Oh, and just a pass. Okay. Oh, and we get the victory screen. So maybe our opponent misplayed there or grabbed the wrong thing off that Ultra. I don't know. But hey, we will happily take the win here. But let's get into another game. Let's try to get a little bit of a longer one. Alrighty, and we actually have a pretty great hand. Actually, we have Dynasty Prism Star. We can open with that. And then we have the Raw Bridget. We don't even need to play these Leles, which is definitely going to be big. So let's see. Okay, looks like some sort of fighting deck. So it could be Zoroark, Lycanroc. Could also be, of course, just Buzzwole. I think that's also an option. And we top deck Fighting Energy. It's actually pretty big as well. Just being able to get down a manual attachment on the first turn. Here we're going to see a Floatstone come down. And a Sycamore, so I'm guessing Buzzwole. Okay, yeah, probably is. So we have the Beast Energy hitting the discard pile. So more than likely it says Buzzwole Lycanroc. And our opponent's going to play Brookwood Hill. I'm actually completely fine with that too. We can definitely make use of that. Our opponent's going to get down a Rockruff here with Fighting Energy, so that's definitely good for them. But nothing else beyond that, so a little bit of a slow start from our opponent. But here we're going to use Brookwood Hill, and let's see. Okay, so we can grab ourselves... Okay, so we have Octillery and Lucario in deck, so what we can do is grab this Gabite, and then we can bridge it and grab ourselves the Remoraid, Gabite... Or, I'm sorry, Gibble, my mistake, and a Riolu. So it seems like a decent little set. Now, unfortunately, we do have two Gibbles prized, which is certainly sketchy. We definitely have to be very careful with these guys. So we're going to get down a double colorless energy, because what I'm thinking is our opponent is probably going to use Lycanroc to try to bring up this Gible and just take a knockout, and I'd prefer actually the double colorless energy to go in the discard pile as opposed to the fighting energy, because we can actually just accelerate it back out with our Garchomp from Breakpoint. So I would actually prefer that over the fighting. And of course, if our opponent whiffs all that to make happen, well, guess what? We can just attach this fighting energy and then hopefully get out the other Garchomp to take a one-hit knockout. So our opponent's going to get down a Buzzwole, kind of as expected, but let's see what they're going to opt to do this turn. Like I said, I'd imagine they're probably going to be looking to take out this Gible. That seems like a good move from our opponent. And, well, actually, maybe what we should have done is attach the double colorless energy to Lele. I think that could have even been an option as well. We might even have to attack with Lele. Oh, but our opponent is going to end us. Just because with Lele, since we have 2 Gibles prize, we're going to need another way to attack our opponent if they take some early prizes before we can get set up. Okay, so just going on to our turn, so we get a Choice Band. What do we do here? We have Field Blower, so let's see what we're going to do. I'm going to search for Brookwood Hill just to see what we have in here. Yeah, as expected. We have a couple Pokemon prize, that's okay. So actually what I think I might do here is, let's play the Field Blower. We'll get rid of I think the Float Stone and the Brookwood Hill. That seems good. So even though there is a Choice Band in play and we are going to probably bench this Lele, well, yeah, I think this is fine. Really not too worried about it just because a Dangerous Rogue GX knocks out Tapu Lele regardless of Choice Band. So it's better just to take that Brookwood Hill away from our opponent and make sure that they don't have access to it. But let's see what we're going to do here. We'll get down the Float Stone, get down Choice Band on Lele just in case. And we'll just play ourselves a Cynthia here. And okay, so we have Gabite, Rare Candy Garchomp, all sorts of good stuff here. So we'll retreat, and actually it might seem weird that, well, yeah, let's just go ahead and evolve, I think. Or well, do we? That's the question. I'm just trying to think, because, yeah, let's just go ahead and evolve here. I was going to say we can maybe hold on to it and maybe conceal the strength of our hand, but I think this is fine. Okay, so we're just going to Energy Drive for 70 to this Lele, and then next turn, depending on what we can get down, we can actually maybe even take a knockout with this Breakpoint Garchomp. So here, our opponent, they're going to get rid of a V-String and a Guzma. Definitely cards I'm happy to see hit the discard pile. Going to go for an Octillery. So I'd imagine they're probably searching for like an attachment, maybe Lycanroc and Floatstone. I think that would be decent from our opponent. Oh, but here they're going to go for a Guzma, which is slightly annoying. But if we can get ourselves a Lucario, we can actually just grab ourselves our second Floatstone to retreat. Here, opponent is going to try to strain this Riolu in the active spot. Just going to Jet Punch for 50, and then 30 to our Remoraid. So definitely a good idea from our opponent, trying to take away our support Pokemon. But here, we have the Floatstone, so I think we're good to go. So I think we actually attach... What do we do here? We can attach this Garchomp and try to two-shot some stuff. Or we can attach the Gabite and try to hit the other Garchomp, but just gonna play it safe, just in case we whiff. Okay. Oh, wait, we wouldn't have had Cynthia anyways to take one-hit knockout, so yeah, I think that's actually perfectly fine, what we did there. So, what we can do here is Precognitive Aura, and we can actually grab ourselves our other Garchomp. Oh, we can actually get Octillery. I do like this as well. Forgot Octillery was in the deck. So we can do that. And we just retreat, I guess. We can also play the Ultra Ball. We'll give her the Fighting Energy and maybe the Brookwood Hill. Yeah, that seems good just because we don't want our opponent to get any value out of that. So we'll do that. And now we can actually get that Fighting Energy out of the discard pile onto our Garchomp and draw some more cards with our Octillery as well. Okay, so some okay cards, I guess. But here we're just going to use Turbo Assault and, you know, put a big dent into this Buzzwole and get some more energy on the field. So I think we're actually in a good spot. We have a Lele with Choice Band, DCE. We have this other Garchomp all ready to go. So I think we're actually doing just fine right now. So let's see how our opponent is going to respond here. I'd imagine they're probably going to go for a Lycanroc, if I just had to guess. That's definitely going to be what they want. And maybe just take a knockout on this Garchomp on the bench, since that is kind of the big threat at the moment. But here we're going to see an Abyssal Hand from our opponent. Let's see what they're going to opt to do here. So we're going to see an Ultra Ball. Okay, so that tells me we might actually see a Lycanroc, or it could be a Lele. Oh, Diancie Prism Start, that's also perfectly fine as well. And a Cynthia, okay. And actually, one thing that would be kind of annoying is if our opponent took out our Lucario or our Octillery. Either of those things would be super annoying. So if they do get Lycanroc, of course they could bring up one of those and try to do that. Oh yeah, that actually may be pretty good, because they could bring up... No, this is probably fine though. They're just going to Jet Punch. So yeah, this is fine. So I actually kind of thankful our opponent. Maybe they didn't even get the Lycanroc. I definitely want to keep these support Pokemon in play for as long as possible. As soon as they go down, this deck kind of comes to a screeching halt. So, but you can see our opponent is slowly chipping away at this Lucario. Kind of realizing that's going to be a pretty big card here. And here, what do? We have a Guzma. We could play that and actually take a knockout on maybe this Rockruff even? Or we just play the N and take the knockout on the Buzzwole. I think that's fine too, getting the 2 prizes. Just because if our opponent does get Lycanroc, we can still take a knockout with our Garchomp. And we need to dig some Gibbles out of the prizes anyway, so I think this is fine here. And we have Rescue Scratcher too, which is nice in case our opponent does take a knockout. We can always get some stuff back. So we're going to grab a Choice Band, I guess, just to thin it out of the deck, I suppose. Don't know what else we would really need here. Oh, I thought we had... Yeah, that's fine. I think we just leave it, actually. We're not really... it's not really imperative that we get it down. And I'm not sure if our opponent plays Field Blower. A lot of these Buzzwole decks don't, but here, I'm just going to retreat. We're going to try to save this Garchomp that we have. And what we can do here next turn, if our opponent does take a knockout, thanks to like a Lycanroc or something like that, we have an N ready to go as well. Okay, so we did get a Gibble out of the prizes. Definitely a good card to get there. So one thing that's unfortunate now is we've opened up our opponent to being able to use B-String, which is definitely not something I'm looking forward to, but nevertheless, I think we're in a good spot, because even if our opponent takes a knockout on this Lele, we have our Garchomp, which we can just respond back with no matter what our opponent promotes here, whether it's Buzzwole or Lycanroc. We can definitely take a one-hit knockout here. So an N would be slightly annoying. Oh man, if our opponent actually if our opponent like end us and use Lycanroc to bring up our Octillery to knock that out and our Lucario, that would be devastating. Okay, so our opponent's going to discard the baby Buzzwole. Looks like a Remoraid, some other stuff here. But here they Sycamore. Like I said, oh man, if our opponent had done that, that would have been pretty scary actually. And our opponent's going to get down a Brooklet Hill. Okay. And is going to fail it. Oh, they do have the Lycanroc though, so had they had the N, that would have actually been pretty... Okay, they're going to bring up this Garchomp instead. I'm actually kind of okay with that, because we're definitely going to need these support Pokemon throughout the course of the game. So I imagine we'll probably see a Jet Punch knock out this Garchomp and the Lucario. That's okay with me. We have Rescue Stretcher, and our opponent put Brookwood Hill in play, so actually I think we're fine here. We have a Gibble in hand, we got off prizes, and we can just get that other Riolu right back into the deck and search out with Brookwood Hill. So yeah, we'll get down the Gibble, yeah, we'll play the Rescue Stretcher, we'll get all 3 back into the deck since we have access to Brookwood Hill. Grab ourselves, definitely Garchomp, and I think we have another Lucario in deck as it is, so I think... I forget, we either have Lucario or Riolu in deck, but I think it's the Lucario that we still have. So I think this is probably fine if we do these. Yeah, I think that's right. So we're going to find out. Hopefully I didn't forget what Pokemon we actually still had left. So yeah, we'll use Brookwood Hill and... Okay, yeah, we did have the Lucario still in deck. I was worried about that for a second. So we're kind of bouncing back pretty decently here. And we get down Choice Band. I think we just hang on to it for the moment. And yeah, we just played the Cynthia here, I think. Alrighty, so what we can do is we can get down a Strong Energy here in preparation of our next Garchomp, and then just do Royal Blades, take a knockout. Okay, so we're going to take 2 more prizes, getting a Gible and a Riolu. Not cards I really want to see off the prizes at this point, since we already have our board kind of set up here. But here, if our opponent does Dangerous Rogue this Garchomp, we're going to need a few things to make happen. So our opponent's going to get down another Buzzwole, Max Elixir. Okay, they are going to fail it. I am happy to see that. So as I said, we're probably going to see a Dangerous Rogue GX taking out this Garchomp. But hey, I'm okay with that too, because that's going to put our opponent at 3 prizes. Have to remember, these Garchomps only give up 1 prize, which is very, very nice here. And next turn, if we can find ourselves like double Colorless Energy, Rare Candy Garchomp, since we have Cynthia already in hand, we're going to be in a fantastic spot. So our opponent is going to use Abyssal Hand here. Okay, oh, and they are going to end us. And this is actually a situation where Octillery, I think, is a little bit better than Lucario in a lot of these situations, because even once our opponent knocks out this Garchomp, we still have Abyssal Hand to refill our hand, whereas with Lucario, we would be stuck with these, you know, kind of lame 2 cards. So we're really glad that we have this Octillery up and running here. And come on. What does our opponent have? Just a Dangerous Rogue, as I expected here. So let's see what our opponents use so far. Okay, here we'll just promote the Diancie since it has the Float Stone on it. And okay, so we get down. Man, we need a lot of cards here. We need double Colorless Energy and Rare Candy Cynthia. Can we get that off this Abyssal Hand? Okay, we do have the Lucario, but unfortunately, that's not what we need. So we do have this Ultra Ball. We could play that and get out like a Gabite or something. What do we do here, though? Yeah, I think we just go with the layaway. I think that's fine. And what we can actually do here is we can Ultra Ball. We can get rid of this Riolu and this Fighting Energy and get Gabite. And then next turn, we can just evolve into Garchomp and win that way. So we'll get rid of those 2. So grab ourselves a Gabite. We also have Octillery for next turn as well. And even if our opponent knocks out the Octillery, we have the Garchomp in hand, so we can evolve into Garchomp and use Lucario in the same turn. So we're going to do 110. Softening up this Lycanroc. And our opponent needs a good bit to knock this out. I actually don't even know if they can. If they get down Strong Energy, that'll be, what, 130? Actually, if they get Strong Energy Choice Band, they can knock out this Tapu Lele, which would be slightly annoying. But honestly, I think we would still be in a fantastic spot to win. All we would need is a Garchomp, and we could just knock out this Lycanroc. So I think we're honestly in a good spot to win this game no matter what happens at this point. So we're going to see a Max Elixir coming down on Buzzwole, I'm guessing. Oh, on the other Rockruff, I guess it's okay. Just going to see an Elixir. And actually one thing that could be annoying is if our opponent like Guzman'd up this Octillery and used Corner, that would also be super problematic. They could potentially strand this Octillery in the active spot, but here we're going to see an Abyssal Hand. So maybe they're digging for their other Lycanroc GX if I just had to guess. Probably just trying to attack with a fresh one. Honestly, even if they do and they get the Choice Band and all that stuff, then we would have access to Counter Catcher, and I think we'd still be in a decent spot to potentially win this. But here we get the victory screen. Our opponent just concedes. They only have 2 cards left in deck anyways. So hey, we are definitely fine with taking a win against Buzzwole Lycanroc. Definitely one of the best decks in the format. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this updated look at Garchomp. What do you think? You think Garchomp has what it takes to stay around in the metagame today? Feel free to sound off in the comments section below. But as usual, feel free to like and subscribe, and if you guys can support this channel by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, or by picking up something from our online store at rarecandytcg.com, it would mean a lot. But with that, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you for the next one.